Ah, the sweet symphony of soup. Hello, 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 and welcome back to Cook It and Eat It here on Jim Johnston Reviews the World. And today, we're going to do one of the hardest things that nobody ever wants to make at home and just buys frozen or goes out to the pea bread store and buys. We're going to make broccoli double cheese soup today. All right, to make our cheese soup, we need at least 2 cups, might be a little more. We'll see how much it takes when we get there. Sharp cheddar cheese. You're going to need a pound of trimmed, peeled stem broccoli florets or 2 12-ounce packages of frozen, pre-thawed, and cut into smaller packages. A note on that, my store that I went to, I go to Aldi a lot, they didn't have any fresh broccoli, so I had to go with the frozen. My Aldi locally, I'm perfectly alright with that because I know this stuff was flash frozen originally and kept nice and cold the whole time. Never been pre-thawed like you might get at some other stores. It might have kind of thawed out in the stocking process. Anyway, you're going to need 2 cups of either full fat, aka vitamin D milk, or half and half. Half and half's a little thick for me, so I want the vitamin D. 2 tablespoons of either brown rice flour or tapioca flour. This can also be like it is here, brown rice ground up in a grinder, coffee mill, things of that nature. 2 tablespoons of that, because that essentially all brown rice flour is ground up brown rice. 2 cups of vegetable or chicken stock, preferably homemade. This is the homemade stuff. It's still thawing out. 1 8-ounce block of cream cheese, and you want to get this warmed up as long as you can. This has actually already been sitting out for a couple hours because I knew I was going to be making this today. 1 small sweet or white onion. This will be diced fine. 2 large celery stalks, also diced fine. 2 tablespoons of butter. 2 dashes W sauce. 8 drops of liquid smoke. Black pepper, about 1.5 teaspoons worth. Chopped chives will be about 1 teaspoon worth towards the end, more of a garnish. And we will use 1.5 teaspoons of garlic powder. All right, this is a pretty simple recipe. You got to follow things and do it in a pretty specific order. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get all of our vegetables broken down, and we'll be back and ready to make a simple yellow roux. Will it be a kanga or a roux? Roux. Alright, we're back. We got our vegetation all cut up into little pieces. We have our pan over medium heat, warming up and getting our butter melted. We have our 2 cups of milk measured out, and we're just letting that warm up to room temperature. Alright, so that is melted enough. I'm going to put our flour in. This is 2 tablespoons of, in my case, hand ground, so not quite as fine as you would like, brown rice. You would be better off to do this in a food processor or an electric coffee grinder. I don't have all the kitchen tools in the world, so I used a hand grind camping coffee grinder for this, and I got it as fine as I could. And it'll work just fine in the end. This is going to cook plenty enough time that it'll be able to soften up the rice, thoroughly cook any larger pieces of rice that are left, I mean. And you just want to keep this moving. It should only take a few minutes. You can smell a toasty, nutty toasting smell, which is one of the reasons you want to keep it moving. Again, if you're using proper flour in this, like you should be, proper rice flour or tapioca flour, you won't be able to see these large solids. Alright, and that took just another minute, and we're almost burnt. So that's how fast the roux will come together. So real quick, we want to go in with our celery, our diced celery, and our diced onions. That moving around, bring the heat down in here a little bit. Then cover this, stir it every couple minutes, let it go until your onion and celery start to sweat down and become slightly translucent. Should take maybe 5-6 minutes. Alright, it's been about 8 minutes. See here, our onions and celery have become slightly translucent. I've lowered the heat down to low, and we are now going to add in our mostly thawed out, in your case hopefully completely thawed out, but chilled chicken broth. That's 2 cups chicken broth. That can also be vegetable broth. You might be able to use pork broth, but I certainly would not recommend using beef broth. Throw the flavor profile off in this, in my opinion. All right, and we have this turned down, like I mentioned, to low, because we want to heat next components somewhat slowly. We go in now, 2 dashers, 1, 2, W sauce, 8 drops liquid smoke, and about 1 teaspoon of garlic, about 1.5 teaspoons fresh ground pepper. Alright, give that a stir, and go ahead while you're stirring and pour in your milk or cream. This is why we lower the temperature to low, because we want to bring this milk up to temp slowly so that we don't accidentally scorch it. And on this point, turn your heat back up just a little bit. Continue stirring until you start to see steam coming off of this again. Alright, we've been stirring and heating and stirring. I've slowly worked the temperature back up on this to a medium-low heat. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to start putting in our chunked up cream cheese. I hadn't thought of a good way to do this. So let me add this cream cheese. Alright, we're back here on Cook It and Eat It, where today we are making broccoli cheese soup, and this is kind of a slow simmer method of making this. We have incorporated our entire block of cream cheese that was kind of cut into chunks, and right now we are continuing to heat and stir to get this cream cheese all broken up and incorporated. So what we want to do here is we want to continue to heat over a medium-low heat until we get this cream cheese fully broken down and incorporated, and we have this whole stock pot up to a nice bubbly simmer. Not a full roaring boil, but a nice simmer. Just stirring and heating over the next several minutes, and we'll be back when we're all incorporated and simmering. Alright, we're back, and this sucker is at a little more of a boil than a simmer, so we're going to cut this heat a little bit, give her a stir. We have all that cream cheese fully incorporated now, and we're going to start in with the cheddar now, and we're just going to sprinkle in a handful at a time, fully incorporate before we add the next. At this point, you want to be heavy with the stirring and keeping an eye on that heat. You don't want to get it too hot because we don't want to scorch this. It is now becoming a full-on cheese soup, so we do not want to scorch this on the bottom. And this is based on a 1920s recipe I found online because, you know, I can't do anything the way it's always been done or the way that it's commonly done. I always got to go outside the box. So when doing my research for this, I found a 1920s recipe, and in that recipe actually the last thing you add is the broccoli, and then let it simmer about 10 minutes at the end with the broccoli in to soften it up. So I'm gonna go ahead and work in all this cheese, and this was a healthy 2 cups, which would probably be about 2 1/4 cups, and we'll see how the texture is after we add that. We might actually add more because we're gonna keep working on this until we get a very smooth, creamy consistency. We'll be right back. Which would probably... Alright, we're back. We got a little bit of the cheese bubbling, and this took about 2 1/2 cups of cheese to get to the right consistency. And let me show you here what we're looking for. What we're looking for is for when you go to your spoon, you get a nice thick covering like that. I did realize when I was making this that this recipe was perhaps a little more advanced than what I normally strive for on this channel. I try to make things that everyone can make, but to make this recipe happen, you just have to pay attention to what you're doing. Can't walk away from it, can't play with your phone. So says the guy that's recording stuff while he's cooking. You know, once you get to the point where you're working in the cheese, you got to keep this moving a lot. And my arm is tired. So this is how we know we're ready, when we got to a consistency like that. Heavy covering on the back of the spoon. Now we're gonna go ahead and get ready to finish and eat. We're gonna sprinkle in our first bag of broccoli. That's why we're going for that real thick on the back of the spoon, because when we add this broccoli, it's definitely gonna thin things out a little bit. Look at that. And again, this is a take mostly accurate of a 1920s recipe that I found when doing my research for a broccoli cheese soup video. It was suggested to me by Becky, who has social media at Your Heart Comes First on Instagram and Facebook. I put out on my Instagram that I was looking for some recipe ideas, and so she suggested that I make a broccoli cheese soup. So I did. So thank you for that. And for anyone else, I am taking suggestions. This channel is a bit of a republic, if you will. And if you want to suggest a recipe, preferably a actual recipe, you would have a recipe in hand that you would want me to do my take on a recipe that you like, or that's a recipe of yours. Preferably not baking. I mean, you can submit baking, but baking recipes probably won't get made. But if you do have a recipe that you want me to make, go ahead and find me on Instagram at Jim Johnston Reviews the World. Give me a follow, and then slide into my DMs with your recipe idea. Well, first tell me a little bit about yourself so that I won't be getting messages from a complete stranger. And then, yeah, tell me your recipe, but your recipe idea, your actual recipe, if you have an actual recipe you want me to do. So when I'm just adding this broccoli somewhat slowly so that we don't shock the recipe, shock the pot, so to speak, with too much of a quick temperature change. Now that really thickened it up with all that raw broccoli. So I'm going to stir this for around 2 or 3 minutes till I feel like everything's well incorporated and starting to heat through. And then at that point, I'm going to drop the temperature medium-low and keep an eye on it and let it come back to a nice low simmer. So we will be back when this is pretty much done. Okay, about 25 minutes has passed. We have this down on low, nice low heat, so we could slowly cook this broccoli through. And I did off camera give this just a tiny little taste with a spoon, just basically about that much. and it seemed a little flat. So I did go ahead and I added a few more grinds of pepper, just a slight couple shakes of crushed red pepper, a little pinch more garlic, and a pinch, small shake of seasoned salt, and all that together really woke it up. I really think that the celery seed and the seasoned salt helped. Celery seed plays so well with any type of green vegetable. It's really good. So I think we're ready to give this a shot now, give this a proper try. It's dinner time here where I'm at. So I do have a pre-made, roasted on both sides piece of cheese toast. And even though this is not French onion soup, but we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna serve this right on top of this cheese toast. And with all that broccoli, this is gonna be a nice hearty broccoli soup. I wouldn't want it any other way personally. All right, here we have it. Our 1920s recipe inspired completely from scratch, no flour, broccoli double cheese soup. Here it is in our bowl with over our piece of well-cooked cheese toast and garnished with a little sharp cheddar cheese and some chives. What do you say? We give this a shot. Nice piece of broccoli, a little bit of that fresh cheddar. Look at that stringy cheddar. Looks delicious. Yeah, it's good. Let's go in right away again. This is the first broccoli soup I've ever made. They called for adding the broccoli last. It's definitely different because usually you get broccoli soup, even though really good stuff from the pea bread company, that broccoli is always cooked pretty much to death. This broccoli still has some body to it, still has some crunch. Despite the fact that it didn't end up, after the broccoli went in, being a super duper thick soup, it's still creamy, and the flavor balance is really good. So those extra seasonings I added at the end definitely woke everything up. That's wonderful, folks. Gotta be honest with you, this one does require a little bit more care, a little more TLC than a lot of my recipes do. With a little bit of patience and that aforementioned TLC, you too can make old school style chicken broccoli soup at home and impress your friends and family with how you're able to make something that's technically fancy food. This is technically very highfalutin food back in the 1920s. Both the cheese content and the broccoli actually were considered to be items of luxury. So the big thing is, once you start putting that cheese in, it's all about management control. You want to get it hot slowly. You want to bring it to a simmer. You want to keep stirring. You want to, if it looks like it's starting to get a little hot, bubble too much, you want to bring that temperature back down. So it's a lot of, stir, adjust the knob type of thing. But if you give it the time, you're going to yield the results. All right, everybody, I want to thank you for tuning in to another delicious episode of Cook It and Eat It here on Jim Johnston Reviews the World. And if you like my stuff, comment below, subscribe, and share this with your friends and family to help me grow the viewing world. Also, throw me a thumbs up if you'd like to. If you would like to further engage with me, or send me a direct message for your own personal recipe ideas for a future episode, you can find me at Facebook and Instagram.com, both at Jim Johnston Reviews the World. Thanks for watching today, and before I leave, from me to you, I just want to remind you, be weird, be free, and most importantly, be independent.